I mean, it's a true fact that I think the United States, China, and India will be the three most important players in the world scene in the foreseeable future. That's undoubtedly true.
If you were not in the field of diplomacy, where would we have seen Ambassador Salas or Federico?
Well, when I was a young man, I wanted to be a bullfighter. So you would have seen me in the bull arena, probably.
Okay.
Which is not too distant from diplomacy, by the way. We are the number one trade partner of India in Latin America. We're the largest investor of Latin America here in India. India has over 200 businesses based in Mexico. In space technology, which is new areas where the two space agencies of the two countries are working together. We're also doing it in high-end medical research, new techniques to combat cancer, for example, that both Mexico and India were working on. So I think it has been a very smart move of both the foreign minister and certainly the prime minister to focus the attention on the potential with Latin America.
Do you see certain priorities of the Mexican government where your people would be interested in India and where we would see a potential, perhaps as Great Lakes as an institution, because areas like analytics, AI, we would be very keen to collaborate with Mexican institutions.
Professors, maybe he is spending some time teaching in one of each other's institutions, joint research projects that could be undertaken, joint publications, I mean, many aspects of academic life. During Independence Day, when India became 75, which was 3 years ago, and the speech of the Prime Minister was basically focusing on where he wants India to be when it turns 100.
Hi everyone, we welcome you from the platform of the Global Business Dialogues today as we inaugurate the series with a very prolific career diplomat who has served in several countries, including India, where he is currently based. But prior to that, he has served in Israel, in Czech Republic, in Indonesia, and as well as in France, where he was ambassador of Mexico to, the UNESCO. And prior to that, he's, as part of his academic credentials are concerned, he has done his BA in government from Harvard University, as well as Masters in Political Science from El Colegio de Mexico. It is my personal privilege and an honor today to welcome none other than His Excellency, Ambassador of Mexico in India, Mr. Federico Salas Lotfe.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you, Chahat, and I'm very glad to be here at Great Lakes. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And it has actually been a dream, since I started working with you for the last couple of years. And now, thank you so much that you've consented and you accepted to visit us and spend some time with our students, faculty, as well as with the leadership team today at Great Lakes. So how has your experience been? If you could tell us about your, campus visit.
No, it's been, so far it's been a very wonderful experience. I have always, as I said when I spoke with the students earlier, for me it's always a very stimulating moment when I can speak with a younger generation, especially to see a large group of highly motivated, intelligent, forward-looking group of young men and women. It's always, for me, at my age, it's very interesting to have this exchange with them and certainly see that, it gives you one great hope for the future when we see, the kind of new generations, the kind of education that they're having and their perspective and how they are projecting their ambitions towards the future. So that has been very, very good. And also, the visit that we've had with the Dean of Great Lakes Institute of Management, as well as other members of the faculty and authorities, I think it has been very productive. And I hope that from this visit, we will be able to develop a closer relationship between this institute and other institutions of higher learning in Mexico.
Absolutely, I totally agree with every part of what you just said. That there is a lot of opportunity when it comes to higher education, with respect to trade and investment as well as culture. Uh, you know, it has actually been our honor that you've been the first speaker, the inaugural speaker at the Global Business Dialogue series, and that you have also consented to uh, be on our board of the Diplomat Circle. So now you are the founding member of the Diplomat Circle.
And I very much appreciate the honor and the fact that you have thought of me for this privilege. You know, when I started my career before becoming a diplomat, I was more involved in academic work. So always coming back to institutions like this one, in many ways brings me back to my roots. And I'm always very happy to be in an environment where not only I can share some of my experience of 4 decades of professional life, but also once again learn from the students, which is, I think, a very important part of academic life.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm sure, I mean, as you've stayed in India for the last 5 years now, it's, I'm sure, going to be more than how we see it as exciting, from the other side of the table. But I'm sure, as an ambassador representing, Mexico, for you, I'm sure that there must have been some incidents or some anecdotes, perhaps, that you would like to share with us of how special India stands as a country, and maybe one or two experiences that makes it all the more special for you.
No, I mean, this is certainly, I mean, it's a very special country for a number of reasons. One of them is because, one talks a lot about similarities between Mexico and India, and the similarities are there, but nevertheless, we're different enough that it makes it very interesting to be here and to experience new aspects of life, of culture, of ways of doing things, of religious practices, the way people are. It's all very exciting in many ways, and I never cease to be surprised when I'm here in India and the many places that I have fortunately been capable of visiting throughout my almost 5-year tenure here. And I can share an experience with you. I think it was 2 years ago, in a trip that was organized by the Foreign Ministry, and which was headed by the Foreign Minister, by Mr. Jaishankar. A group of diplomats and myself, we went to Gujarat, to Vadodara, and there was in the program of the visit. There was a dinner that day, and then it said after that, it said, a dance performance. And I said to myself, I'm a bit tired. I don't, I've seen so many dances here in India already. I mean, this is going to be one more of those. And I almost didn't go, but then I decided at the last moment, okay, I will go. And then we were taking to see, and I was very surprised, when we came to this ground, to see the Garba. And for me, it was absolutely mind-blowing to see this spectacle of almost 40,000 people dancing together with the rhythm, the cadence, the colors, the smiles. And for me, in many ways, that represented all that India is. It was just, lots of people, but doing things in a harmonious way, in a happy way, with the music, with the vibrancy, with the joy of life that you feel in many parts of this country. And it certainly was far more than just a dance performance. It was, for me, a total spectacle. And it just, it's one of the most memorable moments that I've had since I've been here in India.
Wow. I mean, I think, memories like these, when you are based or stationed out of a particular nation, and then you move on to your next stint, like you've moved on from Israel, Indonesia, Czech, and now to India. So I'm sure these experiences shape up your way of looking at things, maybe your perspectives over a period of time. My very, I would say, initial question, which I would like to ask you, Ambassador, is, uh, despite the differences that India and Mexico has in terms of, if you look at the geographies, India is the most populous. I mean, in terms of, we are besides being the largest democracy, we are also the highly populous nation in the world. But if you look at Mexico, there are various specialities which your country boasts of. So maybe if you could highlight some of the similarities that both the nations have, and perhaps what could be the key takeaways from those similarities.
Well, I mean, there's many things that one can point to, but let me highlight one which I think is very important: the demographic pyramid of both countries. Where both countries, I mean, India is 10 times the population size as Mexico, but also as India as well as Mexico, we have almost half of our population is 25 or less years old. So you really have an accumulation there of people who are the ones that are going to be taking both countries forward towards the future. It's a great capital in many ways as an investment into the country as it progresses towards greater development, greater growth, just to enrich and our already very rich cultures. So I think that's one similarity which I think is very important, and that it plays a very key role when we think about what can we do together as countries, even though the dissimilarity in the size, but nevertheless, the fact that we have such a large capital of young people who are obviously looking for many of the same things in terms of their values, in terms of their ambitions, in terms of their outlook into the future, and to the kind of business activities or entrepreneurial activities, or even cultural and political activities toward the future. They share a lot, and that I think is something that for the future will actually play a very important role in shaping the kind of relationship that Mexico and India will have.
Absolutely. In fact, if you look at both the nations, right, we do have certain priorities as countries, right? If you look at India, sectors like, emerging technologies, you look at higher education, you look at real estate, you look at tech side of things, be it the agri-tech or be it the edu-tech industries. Do you see certain priorities of the Mexican government uh, where your people would be interested in India, and where we would see a potential, perhaps as Great Lakes as an institution, because areas like analytics, AI, we would be very keen to collaborate with Mexican institutions.
But I would say that there's a two-tier set of interests. One of them is to strengthen and develop these sort of traditional aspects of the relationship, be it trade. We have a very thriving trade relationship. We are the number one trade partner of India in Latin America. We're the largest investor of Latin America here in India. India has over 200 businesses based in Mexico, that type of thing. Those indicators, I think it's important to keep them growing, to keep developing, to keep the basket, having more products inside, in a way. The trade, the investment, the cultural aspects, the political dialogue that's obviously there, increased tourism, so the people-to-people contacts. So that's one aspect. But there's a second one which I think is very important, which is the in the future. Or actually, we've already started. We've planted the seeds of developing towards new areas like the ones you have mentioned, new technologies, digitalization, development of startups, artificial intelligence. And this is where I think there's an enormous potential for institutions like Great Lakes and other institutions in Mexico to work together and develop a new forward-looking strategies that will be important for both countries to pursue. And we're certainly doing that. We're doing that also, for example, in space technology. We said, new areas where the two space agencies of the two countries are working together. We're also doing it in high-end medical research, new techniques to combat cancer, for example, that both Mexico and India were working on, and other things, other areas such as these. So we're building on the traditional aspects of any bilateral relationship, if you want to see it that way. We're going beyond that, sort of taking things towards the future and making them more dynamic, more progressive. Obviously, that's where the real capital for our respective countries lies.
Absolutely. In fact, if you look at the External Affairs Minister of India, Minister Jaishankar, who is very dynamic when it comes to building relations with countries like Mexico, and his contributions have been instrumental in creating more number of foreign direct investments as well, in several sectors. We could name that, but specifically, if you look at from the Mexican government's point of view as well as from the Modi government in India, uh, do you see that there are several steps being taken to overcome the trade barriers and perhaps enhance the market access between India and Mexico?
Well, one thing that's for sure is that you mentioned Minister Jaishankar. He has been instrumental in refocusing a great deal of the foreign view. I wouldn't say necessarily foreign policy, but the foreign view of the Indian government towards Latin America, and very specifically towards Mexico. And that, of course, includes trade. And I think that, the fact that he himself has traveled to the region 3 times since his tenure as foreign minister, and there have been other high-level visits in both directions, from Latin America to India, and from India to Mexico. All of that is very important because it is, refocusing the priorities that India has had. And I think it's very important because when you think of how India wants to be, and is in the process of being, a very significant power in world politics, and it wants to enhance its footprint in international relations, and it cannot do that if Latin America is not in the equation. So I think it has been a very smart move of both the foreign minister and certainly the prime minister to focus the attention on the potential with Latin America, and of course this opens many new avenues to improve trade, to improve the people-to-people contact, to improve the, across the board, the contacts that both the Latin American countries and India have with each other.
Absolutely. In fact, if you look at the Indian students, perhaps also look at the Indian diaspora outside in different economies, especially Mexico, we have not had the number of students to match up to the countries like US or UK or Australia or Canada for that matter. Do you see a possibility that in times to come, with certain change in reforms or certain scholarships, which perhaps opens doors, or maybe for research, that the government allows on both the sides and negotiate an agreement where we can have more access of education being given to Indian students studying in Mexico, as well as your students coming in to study in India?
Yes, I think that the potential is there. I think it's already happening, but in a very small scale. And this is something that we want to redress. I think it's important to expose more of the Mexican students to the Indian institutions of higher learning, and do it also in the reverse. And this is something I mean, we talk about some of the things that we have done, but we also have, we should talk about some of the things that we should be doing. And this is one of the ones that we already started to do. We need to, to have a greater impulse to it. And I think that my visit here today is a step in that direction. That we're taking other measures, of course, but I think it's very important because what you're saying is right. I think that there's a great deal of potential in not only having student exchanges, but having professors maybe spending some time teaching in one of each other's institutions. There's joint research projects that could be undertaken, joint publications. I mean, many aspects of academic life that we could coordinate together and give an additional push that will bring our two countries together in a much more creative and imaginative way.
Got it. I have an interesting question that I wanted to ask you. What, in your opinion, would be the top three priorities of in terms of the challenges, right? The Mexican economy is facing that your government would like to take it up as a priority to resolve or sort of work towards creating solutions to mitigate most of them. So maybe the top three areas that is facing the issues that is facing your economy.
Well, I think that I mean, certainly the top priority that our government has, which I think is very similar to what is happening here in India, is to sustain the development and growth particularly for one purpose, which is to reduce poverty. And I think that the present government of Mexico has taken very serious steps in that direction and has been successful to some extent in reducing poverty in the country. So that is one aspect. A second aspect, of course, which also has to do with promoting growth and stability, is to attract foreign investment. And I think we have been very successful also in that regard. This is happening right now. Many, especially with the phenomenon known as nearshoring now, many new investments are coming into Mexico. And also, I think one thing that's very important is that many of the businesses that are already in Mexico, including the Indian businesses in Mexico, are doing well. They're thriving, and are expanding. And there's many examples of Indian companies that are doing very well in Mexico. And the third priority, of course, is to I think just provide a general well-being for the Mexican population. We have a population that is, as I said, certainly not as large as the Indian one, but it's a growing population, and it's important that the expectations, especially as I was saying, of this younger group on the population, that their expectations are met in terms of their goals for their own development, their own growth, their own achievement as they grow older and they want to fulfill certain goals. And I think that that's very important, and the government is also focusing on that.
Yeah, interesting. I'm just picking up from the last question. You have worked very closely with the Ministry of External Affairs here. I'm sure you have had interactions with the Prime Minister Modi, and just wanted to have, what are your views of the Prime Minister Modi and the entire team running the administration? I mean, he's in power for the second time, right? So there has to be something right being done, and people have re-elected him back to the office. So maybe how have your interactions been with Prime Minister Modi through various bilateral meetings that have happened?
Well, I really haven't had much of an interaction with the Prime Minister himself as such, but I have seen close enough what is being done by him and his team here in India. For me, it's very impressive, especially one aspect of it, which I think is very important, which is looking towards the future. I remember having been very impressed when during Independence Day, when India became 75, which was 3 years ago. And the speech of the Prime Minister was basically focusing on where he wants India to be when it turns 100.
Yeah.
So basically, he laid out a plan for the next 25 years. And I think that's really very important because not too many political leaders around the world are looking so far ahead and are being so ambitious. And one may discuss whether, how you're going to get there, whether this is the right way or not. That's a different story. That's not for me to say. But what I think is important is that the focus on how to take the country forward, how he wants to bring, India to be a developed country within those next 25 years, now even less, 22, I guess.
Yeah.
And his priorities for the Indian population. I think that's that conceptualization of where he wants to see the country go. I think it's very important.
Yeah. In fact, I agree. If you look at the vision that Prime Minister has for India, and especially with the aim of Viksit Bharat by 2047, being very dynamic, wants to build a very agile ecosystem that actively contributes and collaborates with countries like Mexico, where there's a lot of potential as a society, that we see. So yes, Ambassador, this was a lovely conversation. That was round one of our conversation.
Yes.
Now time for some lighter, points of conversation. So as we now move to round two, which is going to be a rapid fire, right? So we'll need to make it quick and maybe just answer in one word, or you could opt for which option you would like to go for, or maybe arrange in order of your priority, right? So my first question to you, Ambassador Salas, is one word for India.
Diverse.
Awesome. I, couldn't agree more. I mean, if you look at languages, culture, religion,
The colors, the food, the faces, everything. It's,
yeah. And I'm sure you've had a great time. The fact that you've been to Mahabalipuram before, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
this is your second visit to Chennai.
This is my second visit here, yes.
Yes, and happy that we could make it happen for you.
Thank you very much.
My second question, Ambassador Salas, is if you put in order of priority, right? I'll give you a couple of options. China, US, India, Mexico, UK. In the next 5 years, if you could arrange in order of priority, this may not be true, but this is what perhaps you would want, or you would see it happening sometime soon, maybe if not 5 years, 10 years.
Yeah, well, this question has multiple facets, but I would say that, it's a true fact that I think the United States, China, and India will be the three most important players in the world scene in the foreseeable future. That's undoubtedly true. And countries such as Mexico, as well as others, it's not a question that we have to choose, but we do have to, refocus our priorities with each one of these countries. And certainly, one thing that I see is that for Mexico, there is an enormous potential in precisely in the rise of India as an emerging power in world politics. And this is one of the things that I have endeavored to do as ambassador here, to strengthen that relationship, to refocus also the attention that Mexico has with India, because as we were saying, this is a country that is looking forward to the next 25 years. Mexico wants to be part of that experience or of that success that India is bound to have. And I think it's very important that we have the possibility of playing together with India in that regard. Our relationship with the United States, in the case of Mexico, it's inevitable. It's our northern neighbor. It's our largest relationship. We're there.
But there's always a competition, no?
Well, yes, but but competition can be good.
Yes.
It's not necessarily a negative aspect of it, and I think that there's many positive elements to it. And one thing that we have learned in our relationship with such a large power as the U.S., and which is applicable to other big powers that may emerge, certainly as will be the case with China, is how do you manage those relationships? They're not. You don't necessarily have to be subservient to them. You don't necessarily have to lay back and see what happens. I mean, you can be a participant and an actor in their successes and take advantage of that. Yeah. And I think that is something that we have learned from our history, and that can be applicable to our relationship with China or any other country that comes around.
Quite insightful. Well, Ambassador, you forgot this was a rapid fire round.
Sorry about that.
So, Ambassador, if my next question to you would be, if you were not in the field of diplomacy, where would you be? I mean, where would we have seen Ambassador Salas or Federico?
Well, when I was a young man, I wanted to be a bullfighter. So you would have seen me in the bull arena, probably.
Okay, interesting.
Which is not too distant from diplomacy, by the way.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. You have visited a lot of places around the world, through your career. But if you see, or maybe if you could tell our audience today watching this episode, one city that everyone should have it on their bucket list and should not miss it and should visit in their lifetime at least once.
Mexico City.
That was quick.
Yes.
That was quicker.
That was very quick, I know. But it's true.
Yeah.
If I may
Yes.
compliment that.
Yes.
Actually, in some, how sometimes they do these lists of places that are the best for culture or the best for food or the best. Mexico City has, and tourism certainly, but tourism why? Because it is a city that is so great for culture, it's so great for food, it's so great for museums, it's so great for everything. It's a fantastic place. And I certainly would think that anybody, sometimes it's underrated, but it's a place that I think everyone should visit.
Absolutely. I think, we would love to visit Mexico City. I've been to Brazil, but not yet to Mexico. So yes, it's there on my list for sure. And I'm sure people watching this episode will definitely find it more interesting as they discover more insights and facts coming in. My last question to you as part of this rapid fire round. Are you ready for it?
I am, yes.
Are you ready for it?
I'm holding on to it. Yeah.
I don't want to make you feel like you're in a hot seat.
But I am.
Of ABC. So, my last question, Ambassador Salas, is one aspect of the Indian culture that resonates perfectly well to the culture of Mexico. Our audience would love to know that.
There are people of faith. Mm-hmm. It's not just the religious aspect of it, but how people relate to their different cults and to their different the aspects of religious activities. I think that is something that would answer that question.
Great,
and I find that fascinating.
Absolutely, I think I think this was a lovely conversation, Ambassador Salas. I've pretty much learned a lot with your visit today, especially in the event at the Global Business Dialogues where you addressed the larger cohort of in the history of Great Lakes, right? So it's interesting, and by the end of this conversation, the last bit of thought which perhaps our audience would love to know from you, and especially as more and more students and the academic community, if they wish to see this podcast anytime later on, if you were to give them three mantras coming all the way from Mexico for India in particular and the world at large, in general, I mean, if you could tell us what these three mantras would be.
Yes, no, well, certainly for, I think, probably for a more, harmonious society, for a society that, while looking at its future, does not lose the ground of where it's coming from.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what Great Lakes stands for.
Yeah.
Global mindset with Indian roots and the local roots.
Oh, excellent.
Right?
Yes.
I think that resonates perfectly well
Absolutely.
with your thoughts this evening. Thank you very much, Ambassador Salas.
Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Yeah. And we'll catch up again very soon.
I hope so.
Possibly Delhi.
Yes, I certainly hope so. Thank you very much.